Your Discord is truly trash. It makes sense, though.
Russia continued to focus its offensive operations in the Avdiivka sector during this period. The 114th Motor Rifle Brigade was the leading force in the initial offensive, but due to heavy losses, it was later reinforced with the 15th, 21st,
how do these Russians still attack? How do they still have anyone left, man?
On October 19th,
what in the
Russian army made another attempt to break through the Ukrainian defenses. After launching a massive barrage of artillery fire and airstrikes on the Ukrainian strongholds in Avdiivka,
maybe that's what he said. I still bet him anyway.
South to continue their envelopment movement.
Oh shit, they want to circle the Ukrainians.
Sources described the Russian tactics in the Avdiivka section as follows. 10 tanks, armored personnel carriers and infantry fighting vehicles are sent to the battlefield. 2 to 3 of them are destroyed by the Ukrainian artillery on the way. The infantry gets out of the...
They're doing literally mass mob. Like, they don't give a f if any Russians died.
The vehicles, the remaining vehicles go back. They do it every half hour until they make gains or return to their initial lines to give it another try the next day.
They generally have mass mode? Like legit, genuinely real-life mass mode?
Z units consisting of inmates as an expendable first-line forward unit.
This is like a movie. They're sending in inmates as an expendable first wave.
A repeat of the costly Wagner tactic.
Do Russians know about this? How do Russians feel about this? I think they just don't know. Moscow and St. Petersburg, these people just don't know, right? I wonder what like a Grisha says about this. These people, man, I swear
successfully
to God.
used in the Battle of Bakhmut. This allows the Russian army to preserve its more skilled
what is Zelensky gonna do, right?
troops and to send them when a breakthrough happens. The October 19th assault was another failure for the Russian army, which suffered more losses at the hands of the 110th Mechanized Brigade and other units defending the northern section of Avdiivka. According to the Ukrainian military
they're like literal orcs, literal
massive
orcs.
armored losses suffered by the Russian army in the Avdiivka section forced them to bring in more reserves from the 106th Airborne Division and separate tank battalions, along with the Piatnashka Special Forces Brigade. On October 22nd, Russia launched 5 attacks on the northern flank of Avdiivka and reached a narrow section of the railway line, gaining ground towards the Terrakon, some important high ground in this section.
I don't know why you're acting like Ukraine doesn't do this. Shellberg instaban.
Which eventually forced the Ukrainian units on the Terrakon to withdraw, turning it into a grey zone not controlled by either of the sides. Almost simultaneously, the Russian 9th, 55th and 110th Brigades have been trying to break through the defense of the 53rd Mechanized Brigade on the Vodyana-Opitna line, gaining minor ground in the process.
Dude, these poor ass Ukrainians, man, it's like a Hydra. You kill one Russian, 10 more pop up.
Reported a Ukrainian counterattack towards Pisky in this section on October 22nd, but it seems it has not changed the situation on the ground much. On October 25th, the Russians launched another assault from Krasnohorivka in the north of Avdiivka and expanded the area of its control along the railway, and according to Russian sources, captured the Terrakon, although we are yet to see video proof. There have been a few more attacks to gain a foothold in the Avdiivka coke plant, but as of late October, all of them have been repelled.
Is that a like literal Coca-Cola plant? Like legit?
The Ukrainian
it means coal. Oh, coke means coal. Oh, I never heard that in my whole life.
Catastrophic, and they have been inflicting massive losses on the Russian army in this area. Still, the Russians have continued gaining ground, despite these losses, by simply overwhelming Ukrainian defenders with increased artillery shelling and armored attacks. Evidently, the Russian command feels that it can tolerate these losses, as despite losing thousands of pieces of equipment, Russia still has a lot more weapons, vehicles and equipment to keep attacking the same places over and over again.
Imagine there's still a human being out there that thinks Russia has a chance against NATO. I mean, at some point, man. At some point.
Until they capture them. To compare, Ukraine does not have this luxury, as the more minor pushing them so hard it suffered to the limits. On the first days of the Zaporizhzhia counteroffensive forced them to rethink its tactics. Russia will continue attacking Stepova, Berdichi, the coke plant and Severna to cut all the Ukrainian supply lines into Avdiivka, and the situation remains problematic for Ukraine. A potentially significant situation has been developing along the Dnipro. For months, the sides have been exchanging regular artillery fire.
They're just bombing themselves to shit, man.
While the Ukrainians have been raiding islands of the river Delta, along with sections of the left bank. Ukraine has been in control of a small area on the left bank near the Antonivsky Bridge for a while now, but it is not a promising area for a functioning bridgehead due to the terrain. On October 17th, the AFU intensified its attempts to create a bridgehead on the left bank. Several assault groups of the 35th and the 36th Naval Infantry Brigades landed there and immediately captured the village of Poima and gained ground inside the village of Pischanivka. According to Russian sources, this attempt...
Imagine being such a Marine, man. Like in the Dark Night, man, you go over that river, and you go to war like that. These are fucking men, bro. It's hard for Ukraine to do counteroffensive. Yes, Wang.
Was eventually defeated. But on October 19th, Ukraine gained another foothold on the left bank. Territorial defense forces overwhelmed the Russian troops near Krinky, allowing the 35th Naval Infantry Brigade to deploy and gain control of the village. As of late October, the Ukrainian bridgehead in Krinky still exists, and they have even expanded the area of control, managing to bring more troops to the left bank. So far, there is no indication that Ukraine...
I'd like to see it a bit more in HOI4. I think it's in the Ukraine mod that rivers are a bit more important. The only thing rivers do in HOI4 is you get a 25% debuff or some shit, right? But actually having to use marines and stuff on like huge-ass rivers, I think that's a great idea that some mods actually have been exploring.
And they have only been supported by artillery firing from the right bank. The Russians are still fighting to destroy the Ukrainian bridgehead. Even if Ukraine succeeds in creating a sustainable bridgehead, we should not expect a lightning-quick advance in this area, since Russia has been building defensive structures on the Kherson front as well, and is probably sending reinforcements to this area as we speak. Russia has no shortage of troops in Ukraine, since, according to the Ukrainian military intelligence official Andriy Yusov, Russia has more than 400,000 soldiers in Ukraine. On the other hand, it is a potentially risky situation. A Ukrainian bridgehead would force the Russians to divert reserves from other fronts, harming their offensive potential in the Avdiivka section and Luhansk front, and their defensive potential on the Zaporizhia front.
I really wonder where this is all gonna go, man. Fucking hell. I wish NATO will do more.
And around Bakhmut.
Do you think the Russian government watches this video? I don't think so.
The Russian command has dismissed the commander of the Dnipro area and appointed the VDV commander, Mikhail Teplinsky, who is considered a respected and capable commander in the Russian military. If true, it means that the Russian command is not happy with the performance of its troops along the Dnipro and recognizes the risk of the Ukrainian breakthrough.
If there weren't nukes, I bet you would be in Ukraine right now. Where were you, huh? Where would you be, you fuck? What do you mean?
On the Zaporizhia and North Luhansk fronts, the status
If there was no nukes, there was no Vladimir Putin right now,
Heavy fighting continues in the Robotyne salient, but neither side has achieved any important gains in this period. On the North Luhansk front, the Russian offensive has largely fizzled out. They have made small gains in the Serebryansky forest area, but have lost ground to the Ukrainians near Sinkivka and Olyanska.
And they're fighting for... This is literally World War I, man.
The most notable event of the second half of October was that Ukraine finally got its ATACMS long-range missiles. After months and months of negotiations and stalling, the
son was born? Oh, man. I remember you. Yeah, I remember. Congratulations, brother, man.
With a range of
my son shit himself today,
containing hundreds of bombs.
Does every day.
The Western media has claimed anywhere between...
And this makes me want to play Millennium Dawn, but Millennium Dawn is so fucking bad,
less than a dozen to 20 missiles being given to Ukraine. If true, that is an astonishingly low number, which is not going to have a major impact on the war. Perhaps the United States will give more, and Germany will finally agree to send its Taurus long-range missiles after seeing the impact ATACMS had the first time the Ukrainians used it, catching the Russians unprepared. On October 17th, Ukraine launched several ATACMS missiles on Berdyansk and Luhansk airfields, which destroyed...
Do you think there's hope for Ukraine? The point is, I really cannot tell, and I think it's uneducated to act like you know shit. Nobody knew that Ukraine would hold out this long. I think that even if Ukraine loses now, this is a massive hit against Russia that will fuck them up for decades to come. But I think also Ukraine falling will have two major things for... First of all, the psyche, the spirit of the West. It will hurt a lot of people. It will hurt their souls. It will... I generally think that depression will rise a bit, having a message like that. A big refugee wave will come. A lot of Ukrainians. We have a lot of Ukrainians here in Germany already, but they're more welcome because they're white, right? People are not racist against them so much. I often like to think about life in a history book. I always think in 200 years, kids are in school reading history books. What will they say about you and me, about our generation? And if Ukraine loses, I think they will say, you fucking pussies. You fucking pussies let Ukraine fall apart like this. Look at us, looking at history. Look at World War II, right? Oh, Chamberlain was appeasing. What a retard. You shouldn't have appeased Hitler. We should have taken him down the moment he was Anschlussing, man. Because now we're more intelligent, right? And I think that's what we're going to think if Ukraine falls, man. We're going to be like, what a fucking disaster. And what a mistake of the West.
Ka-52 attack helicopters and 2 Mi-8 helicopters, and damaged another 8 Ka-52s and 7 Mi-8s. This was the biggest damage the Russian Air Force has suffered since the start
of down to US elections? I never understand that. Why does it come to US elections? Joe Biden helps Ukraine, and I think Donald Trump wants to show power too, and also wants to help Ukraine. But one thing is crystal clear, all my American viewers, man, the Russians will massively fuck with your election, man. They will put so much propaganda into your
since the end of World War II.
Into your social media,
bro. It
will
likely force the Russians to station its fighters and helicopters further away from the ATACMS range, which will decrease their effectiveness. A few months earlier, the Ukrainian military intelligence chief, Kirill Budinov, argued that Ukraine would need hundreds of ATACMS missiles. Obviously, ATACMS is not some sort of Wunderwaffe, just like HIMARS or F-16s are not. None of the weapons, tanks, jets, or missiles are going to single-handedly win the war for Ukraine.
How do you suck out snot? There's a lot of devices, man. What we do is you have a little piece of plastic that you put in their nose, but they go like, so you have to like you have to Guantanamo Bay them, right? You have to Guantanamo Bay these fucking kids. So I'm taking my kid like this, stop moving, and you put it in, and then there's a little valve, and then you have a thing, right? And you go, and then it sounds really weird. It sounds like, and you suck out the snot, man. It helps them a lot because children don't know yet what blowing your nose is, right?
Which every weapon that Ukraine gets helps them in the war of attrition currently waged by Russia.
You will know one day.
More ATACMS means more destroyed Russian
assets. You know how hard it is
to
cut a child's fingernails or brush their teeth, man? You have no idea.
The Ukrainian people will be happy to hear about the Biden administration's intention to ask Congress for $60 billion to aid Ukraine. On October 20th, Biden once again reiterated the American intention to continue supporting Ukraine, but the level of the US military aid to Ukraine in October suggests otherwise, as the Biden administration is struggling with keeping the far right in the US Congress in the fold with regards to Ukraine support.
These fucking assholes, fucking dumbass Republicans, man. They just are against the current thing to be anti, bro.
For the Ukraine battle map profile on Twitter, the level of American military aid to Ukraine in October was 93.5% less in comparison with the first half of 2023. The only military aid package pledged by the USA in the second half of October to Ukraine was worth $150 million, which included NASAMS and HIMARS munitions, small arms, AIM-9M and Stinger missiles, and Javelin anti-tank guns, among other things. The United States has also finalized the delivery of all 31 promised M1 Abrams tanks. Let's look at other reports on foreign military aid to Ukraine. On October 18th, the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba stated that Kyiv has signed contracts with 59 companies from 23 countries on the production of weapons for Ukraine, which is consistent with the earlier observation of Ukraine's intention to ramp up domestic military production in order to decrease its dependence on foreign aid. The statement from the US Secretary of Defense William LaPlante regarding the beginning to pivot to rebuilding or building an industrial base inside Ukraine should be seen in the same light.
That would make sense, yeah, to really help Ukraine build their own industry, but then the Russians will fucking bump the shit out of it, right?
Croatia promised to send all 14 of its Mi-8 helicopters to Ukraine. On October 24th, Germany announced a military aid package worth 1.4 billion euros.
I don't know if that's true. I'll show you something.
Consisting of 3 additional Gepard anti-aircraft guns, 40 RQ-35 Hydron and Vector recon drones,
tank thing,
a
whatever, let's
bridge-laying
just see,
system, 3 HX-81 tank recovery vehicles, 13 border patrol vehicles, and
he already said that last video, man. He's kind of often recycling his content.
Along with 200 million euros to support the Ukrainian economy. On October 25th, Australia sent demining equipment, portable X-ray machines, a 3D metal printer, and counter-drone systems worth $20 million.
3D metal printer. That's good for one.
On October 26th, Denmark announced a military aid package worth $522 million, consisting of T-72 tanks, BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles, artillery shells, drones, small arms, and engineering vehicles. There have also been reports about the US intention to send the so-called Frankensam air defense systems, a hybrid between American and Soviet systems to help Ukraine withstand the expected winter campaign of Russian aerial attacks on the Ukrainians' critical infrastructure. The most baffling and frustrating development for Ukraine regarding the military aid from its Western partners was the Bloomberg report claiming that the European Union has completed only 30% of its plan to deliver artillery shells to Ukraine.
What a disgrace, right?
Which are crucial in the ongoing war of attrition. The EU is significantly behind schedule, and according to the Lithuanian foreign minister, it has delivered only 300,000 shells, while North Korea has already delivered 350,000 to Russia. It is another example
North Korea
of many
is
EU
giving more
countries
shells to the war than the EU, man. Like I just talked about, right? This is a historical disgrace.
Acting without any sense of urgency in the face of a strategic threat from Russia. The somber Time magazine story on President Zelensky gives a peek at the current level of frustration in the Ukrainian leadership regarding the Western military aid. Zelensky complained of Ukraine fatigue among Western elites. Exhaustion with the war rolls along like a wave. You see it in the United States and in Europe. And
Which is so sad, man. Just because you're tired of the war doesn't mean the war is gone. It's
that as soon as they start to get
no
a
willpower,
tired,
weakness, man. This is fucking
like a
ridiculous.
Show to them. I can't watch this rerun for the 10th time. The article also talks about the inability of Ukrainian...
Becomes like a show to them. I can't watch the rerun for the 10th time. Damn. That was deep.
...units to go on an offensive simply due to the lack of weapons. Some have dismissed this article due to its author, Simon Schuster's, previous takes about Ukraine and have questioned his neutrality.
I'm exhausted of defending democracy.
Reflected in the story are consistent with reports from Western media outlets, such as the dissatisfaction of some in Western governments with the level of corruption in Ukraine. This is not to say that Ukraine's allies are to blame for all the problems Ukraine has experienced on the battlefield, not at all. Their military, financial, political and intelligence support has been invaluable for Ukraine, keeping it in the fight against the Russian army, which has adapted well to the challenges it faced earlier in the war and still has huge reserves to keep the war going. The Ukrainian army failed to succeed in its counter-offensive in Zaporizhia, and some questions can be asked from the Ukrainian military command about the tactics it employed and whether defending Bakhmut until the end was prudent due to the losses that the AFU suffered there. The Ukrainian government can be criticized for its inability to solve the issue of corruption.
I always wonder, I think about Makish, right? You remember the guy I interviewed for the channel? Like, you and me were privileged people. We live in safe countries and shit, man. Imagine you're a Ukrainian watching this, man. They're talking about the end of your country, man. They're talking about the end of your fucking country, man.
It has been hurting this country for decades. But this should not absolve Western countries of blame for not delivering on their pledges, and still having a rather casual peacetime mentality, despite facing an obvious strategic threat from the Kremlin. The bloody and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine by Putin has been going on for more than 20 months. The biggest war in Europe since World War II has turned into a war of attrition yet again. Ukraine will be looking to prevent the Russian army from securing Avdiivka, expanding its operations on the left bank of the Dnipro, ramping up domestic military production, and persuading its allies to give more vital aid. Putin will seek to maintain domestic stability while sending more men and resources to fight his aggressive war of conquest in Ukraine in the long term, and prevail in the war of attrition. In the end, as always, I
always wonder what would happen if Putin dies like right now. Like right now he's dead. I wonder what would happen. I think not much will change.
Look at the visually confirmed losses
I think
brought
the new
to
guy
you
will
by
just
the
keep
Oryx
going.
blog. As of October 31st, Russia has lost at least 2,438 tanks, 4,975 vehicles, 254 command posts and communication stations, 1,022 artillery systems.
It's probably nothing to them. You know what Russia feels like? So they lost 2,000 tanks, right? You know what Putin does? He goes like this. Oh man, still have 23,000 left. You know, they probably just don't give a shit.
300 multiple rocket launchers, 93 aircraft, 132 helicopters, and 317 drones. Ukraine has lost at least 682 tanks, 2,128 vehicles, 18 command posts and communication stations, 424 artillery systems and vehicles, 49 multiple rocket launchers, 77 aircraft, 37 helicopters, and 215 drones. More videos on this topic are on the way, so make sure you
every time I watch
subscribed
videos about
and
Ukraine,
press
I
the
just
bell
get
button.
depressed, man. What are you still doing here, mate? Jeez! Well, if you want to see more, click these videos. Have fun. Looking good, boy.